They built the walls around you before you even knew you were trapped, before you could speak, before you could dream, before you could even understand the weight of chains. They had already fastened them around your wrists, not with metal but with words, not with lock but with doubt. They shaped the air around you, poisoned your reflection, turned your voice into an echo so faint that even you started to forget what it sounded like. They didn't have to cage your body, they caged your mind. And a prisoner who believes in their own captivity will never run, even if the door is wide open. You were taught obedience before you were taught your own name, conditioned to bow before you were ever told you could stand. They wrote your story before you even held the pen, carved your fate into stone while you were still learning how to walk on the dirt beneath you. And you accepted it, not because you were weak, but because you were made to believe that questioning was rebellion, and rebellion was destruction. You were told to be grateful, told that the ones in charge had the answers, had the wisdom, had the right to shape your existence. But tell me, who gave them that right? The chains were subtle at first, the way they spoke to you, the way they framed your worth. They draped expectations over your shoulders, expectations that did nothing but weigh you down. They whispered limitations into your ears until those whispers became your own thoughts. You began to measure yourself not by your potential, but by their approval. And when you dared to step beyond their line, they pulled you back, not with force, but with fear. They didn't need to push you down. They made you afraid to rise. But here's the truth they never wanted you to know. Fear is the last defense of the powerless, the ones who control you, the ones who manipulate, the ones who enforce the rules. They aren't strong, they are terrified, terrified of what would happen if you opened your eyes, if you realized that the walls around you were never real, if you understood that they only hold power as long as you surrender it. What if the ones who chained you are the ones who should be afraid? What if the only thing holding them up is the illusion that you are beneath them? What if their greatest nightmare is the day you wake up and understand that you were never powerless at all? Because that day is coming, and when it does, the chains will not break. They will shatter. The walls will not crack. They will crumble, and the ones who stood above you will find themselves looking up for the very first time. They made you believe they were untouchable, that their power was absolute, their authority unquestionable. They moved like giants, spoke like prophets, cast shadows so vast that you forgot the sun existed beyond them. Every word they spoke dripped with certainty. Every rule they set in stone felt immovable. They built thrones out of your obedience, crowns out of your silence. And for so long, you believed it. You believed their word was law. You believed their control was permanent. You believed the cage was locked. But power is not what they hold. Power is what they convince you they have. Their rule is not built on strength. It is built on deception. A system carefully designed to keep you in check, to keep you afraid, to keep you from ever questioning why things are the way they are. They gaslight you, rewrite history in real time, distort the truth until even your own memories betray you. They make you believe you are nothing without them, that without their structure, without their rules, you would crumble. And so you obey. You stay within the lines they've drawn for you, not because you are incapable of stepping beyond them, but because they have convinced you that the world outside those lines does not exist. But what happens when you question them? What happens when you take even a single step back and truly look at them? You see the cracks. You see the desperation behind their composure. You see how fragile their thrones really are. The moment you begin to think for yourself, their illusion begins to break. Because control is never about strength, it is about belief. And the moment you stop believing in their power, they lose it. Imagine a lion raised in a cage, born behind steel bars, never knowing the wild, never feeling the full weight of its own strength. It grows, powerful yet unaware, pacing the small space it has been given, never realizing that the cage was never locked. It has always had the power to break free, but it was never told it could. It was never given permission. It was conditioned to believe that the bars define its world, and so it stays, not because it must, but because it believes it must. You are that lion. They have kept you in a cage of their design, told you the world beyond it is dangerous, that you are safer within the limits they set. But what happens when you step forward? What happens when you test the bars and find them weak? What happens when you realize they were never strong enough to hold you? That is their greatest fear, not your rebellion, not your anger. Their fear is your realization, the moment you wake up, the moment you see them for what they are, cowards hiding behind an illusion. Because once the lion remembers its strength, no cage can hold it. And once you remember yours, no power they claim to have can stop you. The first crack is always small, barely noticeable, a whisper instead of a roar, a single step where none was taken before. And yet that is all it takes, because control is not maintained by force alone. It is held together by belief. And the moment someone dares to question it, the moment one person refuses to bow, the illusion begins to shatter. It starts with defiance. Maybe it is a word spoken too boldly, a refusal where compliance was expected. Maybe it is someone standing where they were meant to kneel. It doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be violent. It only has to exist. And the moment it does, the ones in power feel it like a tremor beneath their feet. Because defiance spreads, it is contagious. A single act of resistance is a match in dry grass, a ripple in still water. History is carved by those who refuse to accept the world as it was dictated to them. The nameless faces that dared to say no. The ones who stood when they were told to fall, who walked when they were commanded to stop. They were called reckless, they were called foolish, but they were the first to see the cracks in the foundation. And once the cracks appear, they do not stop growing. There was a time when a single voice could be drowned out, when a single act of defiance could be silent, but not anymore. Not today. The world has changed, and those who thought themselves in control are beginning to realize that the ground beneath them is no longer stable. They feel the shift. They hear the voices rising. And for the first time, they are the ones who do not know what happens next. Because there is a moment when fear changes hand. When the ones who ruled with certainty suddenly find themselves doubting. When the ones who silenced others suddenly struggle to make their voices heard. That moment is here. The moment you stop fearing them, they start fearing you. And once that balance shifts, it never tilts back in their favor. There comes a moment when the fog lifts, when the weight on your shoulders feels a little lighter. Not because they have removed it, but because you have started to realize it was never yours to carry. You see it now, the way they shaped the rules, the way they twisted your reflection, the way they used silence as a weapon against you. Not just your silence, but the silence of everyone around you. They kept you divided, afraid to speak, afraid to question, afraid to stand together. Because they knew the truth, their power was never real. It only existed in the spaces where your voices did not. But now the silence is breaking. One voice rises, and then another. One step forward turns into a march. And suddenly what was once impossible is now inevitable. This is the domino effect, the power of one person standing, inspiring another, until the tide is unstoppable. They spent years convincing you that you were alone, that you were powerless, that no one would rise with you. But that was a lie, and now you see it for what it is, because you were never weak. They just made you believe you were. They buried your strength beneath doubt, beneath obedience, beneath generations of whispered fears. But strength is not something they can take from you. It is something that has always been there, waiting, and now it is awake. They only win if you submit. But you are not submitting anymore. You are speaking, you are standing, and with every step forward, they step back. Because for the first time, they understand what you have now realized. You were never the one at risk. They were, and now they are the ones who should be afraid. Now the air has changed. You can feel it. The weight that once pressed down on you is lifting, but it has not disappeared. It has only shifted. It has moved onto their shoulders, the ones who once stood above you, untouchable, unquestioned. Now look over their shoulders. Their voices, once filled with certainty, now tremble with something they never expected to feel: fear. They are watching you now, studying your every move, listening to your words, dissecting your actions, desperate to know what comes next. Because for the first time, they are no longer in control. For the first time, they do not hold the script. You do. The rules they wrote are beginning to collapse. The walls they built are no longer solid. And now they wonder, when will the flood come? The powerful do not fear violence. They fear defiance. They fear the moment you stop believing in their authority, the moment you stop playing by their rule. Because when the illusion of control breaks, they are exposed, naked, powerless, and nothing terrifies them more than the realization that they were never gods, just men pretending to be. Watch them now. See how their hands shake when they speak, how their eyes dart, calculating, uncertain. They do not know who to trust. They do not know how far the shift has spread. They whisper in dark rooms, scrambling to find a way to put the fire out before it consumes everything they built. But it is too late. The flames are already rising. The hunted becomes the hunter. The prisoner becomes the judge. The powerless become the reckoning. And now they are the ones at risk. There is no stopping it now. The moment has passed where they could have silenced you, where they could have convinced you to return to your place. That window is gone, shattered beyond repair. Because once you rise, you cannot be forced back down. Not truly, not without a fight that they are no longer prepared to win. This is the power of momentum, a force they never accounted for. They built their rule on control, on the idea that you would always hesitate, always second-guess, always bend just enough to stay in line. But what happens when hesitation turns to certainty? When second-guessing turns to conviction? What happens when belief is no longer in their power, but in your own? The wildfire has started. It began with a single spark, a whisper, a refusal, a moment of defiance. But fire does not stay small. It does not apologize for spreading. It does not ask permission to burn. It consumes everything in its path, devouring the old, making way for something new. That is what is happening now. The structures they built are dry wood. The systems they swore would last forever are nothing but kindling, and the flames are rising faster than they ever could have imagined. And now they run. The same ones who held their heads high, who spoke with unshaken confidence, who ruled without question. They are the ones looking for escape, searching for shelter. But there is none, not anymore, because this is the point of no return. The shift is irreversible, and they know it. The storm has arrived, and it is one they cannot stop. Now comes the moment they feared the most, the reckoning. The day they prayed would never arrive, the day they swore would never come. Yet here it is, standing before them, undeniable, unrelenting, and at the center of it all, Yubum. No longer afraid, no longer waiting for permission, no longer bending beneath the weight of their rules. You stand before them now, face to face with the very ones who once dictated your every move, who made you doubt your worth, who thrived off the illusion of their superiority. But there is no illusion anymore. Their masks have crumbled. Their voices no longer carry the weight they once did, because now you see them clearly, not as giants, not as untouchable forces, but as they truly are, weak, desperate, powerless in the face of your awakening. This is the final shift, the moment where you decide whether to claim your power fully or whether to shrink back into the shadows of who you once were. Because make no mistake, they are hoping you will hesitate. They are hoping that some small part of you still seeks their approval, still needs their validation, still longs for the comfort of the old world. But that world is gone, and you do not need their permission, because the truth has always been there, waiting for you to see it. They never had power. You just hadn't taken yours back. And now, as they look at you with fear in their eyes, they know what you know. You are never giving it back again. Freedom was never about the walls around you. It was never about the rules they enforced, the chains they made you see. It was always in the mind, because the greatest prison is not built with iron. It is built with beliefs, and for so long, they controlled yours. They made you believe you were less, that you were incapable, that you needed them. But now, you see the truth. The chains were never real. They were ideas, planted deep, wrapped around your thoughts, shaping your identity until you could no longer tell where they ended and you began. But now, piece by piece, you tear them away. You strip them of their influence, their authority, their ability to define who you are. And what remains? Not the person they molded, not the version of you that obeyed, but something greater, something unstoppable. This is where true power begins, not in destruction, not in vengeance, but in transformation. Because they expected your rage, they expected your wrath, they expected you to seek to break them the way they once broke you. But that would still mean they control your actions, dictate your response, shape your purpose. And you are beyond that now, because the ultimate truth, the one they never saw coming, the one they never even considered, is that you were never their prisoner. They were yours. They lived in your mind, in your fears, in your doubts. And now, as you break free, as you step into the full weight of your power, they are the ones left behind, trapped in the ruins of a world they can no longer control. And you walk forward, unchained. Everything has led to this. Every battle, every struggle, every moment of doubt that once chained you to the ground. But now, there is no doubt, no hesitation, no fear, because you have crossed the threshold. You are in charge now. This is the full circle moment, the final shift, the day they dreaded, the day you were once too afraid to dream of. The balance of power has not just tilted, it has collapsed in your favor. And as you stand here, unshaken, unbreakable, you realize what they never wanted you to understand. You were never meant to follow. You were always meant to lead. They no longer decide your fate. They no longer write the rules. That power belongs to you now. And with it comes the final release, the weight of their control, the fear they instilled, the hesitation that kept you in place for so long. It all falls away. There is no more seeking approval, no more waiting for permission, no more wondering if you are worthy of the life you were meant to live. You take it, you claim it, you own it. And in this final moment, in this undeniable shift, one thing becomes clear. They were never in charge. They only borrowed the power you had not yet reclaimed. But that time is over. The illusion is dead. And now, the world moves at your command. This is not the end. This is your beginning. So now, here we are. The moment you never thought would come. The moment they feared the most. And you stand before them, not as the person they once controlled, not as the pawn they pushed, not as the voice they silenced, but as something greater, as something unshakable, as something they can never break again. They wanted you weak. They wanted you small. They wanted you to believe that power belonged to them and them alone. But they were wrong. And now, as they look at you, they know it. They feel it. That cold, creeping realization that their time is over. So let them hear you now. Let them feel every word. Let them understand, without question, that they have lost. You had your time. Now it's mine. No more submission. No more waiting. No more bending beneath their weight. This is the moment where everything shifts, where everything ends for them and made to begin for you. Look at them, silent, shaken, scrambling for something to hold on to. But there is nothing left, because you are the storm now. You are the fire. You are the reckoning. And this is the last thing they'll ever hear from you. Not a plea, not a whisper, but a promise. They thought they were in charge. Now they're the ones at risk. Double asterisk.